Hello everybody, this is Professor Ramirez and I would like to review this scholarly article called Richard Marsh's The Beetle, a late Victorian popular novel. This is by literary critic Minna Vuohelainen, and what I'm going to do is just provide an overview of this scholarly essay and point out some significant features. I'll be working with my own hard copy, so you'll probably hear me shuffling some pages. To begin, what Vuohelainen does is she talks about the reception of Richard Marsh's work. Richard Marsh was remarkably popular in the 1890s, and critics loved The Beetle. They called it weird, thrilling, really exciting, full of mystery, and extremely powerful. Richard Marsh began his career writing under his original birth name, which was Bernard Heldman. He was born in 1857 and he passed away in 1915. So his writing spans the gamut from Victorian literature to Edwardian literature. And I think we can sense some of the modern cutting edge elements in the Beetle itself. And I'll talk about those in a bit. So when Marsh began his writing career, he worked with a remarkably successful boys writer named George Alfred Henty. And Henty was something of a mentor for Heldman, otherwise known as Marsh, and he gave him opportunities to edit a boys' journal, the Union Jack, and this was successful up until about 1883. Where the relationship between Henty and Marsh came to an abrupt end. What happened after that was Heldman, again also known as Marsh, reinvented himself, and he took on the name Richard Marsh and published with that name. And the kinds of work that he published also seems to have taken a different turn. He seems to have adopted in his later fiction a cynical, streetwise, and decidedly up-to-date genre fiction, which stood out in contrast to Heldman's religiously inspired juvenile fiction for young male readers. And so I just think that it's very interesting that he could write in a variety of genres, and especially for different kinds of audiences. This essay also points out how Marsh had experience as a journalist, and so he could identify different kinds of audiences and tailor his work to those audiences. And he could also look at specific themes and elements that would be, again, of interest or cutting edge. These include the notion of social deviance, the figure of the new woman, the foreigner, the criminal, and the outcast. And of course, we do see these very specific parallels in the Beetle, where the Beetle functions as that foreign or alien element, and Holt is something of an outcast, and seems to also perhaps embody some level of deviance, manipulated by the Beetle, but nevertheless there is deviance there. So in terms of Marsh's audience, he was appealing to a lower middle class sensibility. And I think what's important here is that this essay points out how the Education Acts of the 1870s created literacy among the lower middle classes. And so Marsh was really successful in tapping into that market. He published his fiction in a variety of magazines. These include The Strand, The Idler, and Blackwoods. These are very famous Victorian magazines. And he published his novel, The Beetle, in installments, serialized in the journal called Answers. And what's very funny or very ironic is that as home journals, the issues go into the homes and they enter the houses of every grade of society. It is always a gratifying thought that no harm can come from the reading of any of our publications, and that by encouraging the taste for pure literature, we are rendering a service to the times in which we live. So as this essay points out, this is an odd claim or an odd venue for the Beetle, such claims for a family audience seem strangely amiss in considering the sensational subject matter of the Beetle. The next thing I want to talk about in this scholarly essay is how not only does Vuohelainen conduct research on print culture in the Victorian era, but she also does a close reading of the text. And we'll go to that on page 96. And so she's quoted at length the visual of the Beetle, and she locates this visual within this conversation about degeneracy and racial stereotyping and animal characteristics that would crop up in the characterizations of the other in Victorian literature. She also addresses in her close reading gender bending with the conflation between female and male characteristics. And then she wraps up her discussion to talk about how the Beetle reflects some of the squalor and the poverty of London in the 19th century. And the Beetle is associated with filth, with something that's depraved, with something that is dirty. And this was a common technique in Victorian fiction to associate the other with squalor or with dirt. The last point that she makes is about deviant sexuality and its association with the Beetle, and how Marsh is very successful in creating a sense of pleasurable horror for his readers. And she overall makes the argument that we really ought to keep this novel in the critical eye, and she's basically inviting future critical analyses. I hope this was helpful.